Welcome back. In the last lesson, we got you through step 8 of the YNAB setup checklist. And in this lesson, we are going to discuss steps 9 and 10. And to do that, we're going to talk about YNAB's 3 columns, how to understand what they mean on the budget screen. We're also going to discuss the colors. You're going to see lots of yellow and red and green. What does that mean? And then we're also going to look at setting up and understanding how the credit cards work inside of YNAB. With that being said, let's go ahead and jump into YNAB. We'll take a look at the checklist again here, scroll down to step 9, and you're going to see step 9 is about budgeting your ready to assign dollars down to 0. And I'm going to recommend that you do it in this order. Well, let's go back over here and let's even talk about what does that even mean? If we look here at the top, you're going to see my ready to assign has $13,400 in it. Now, the ready to assign is the amount of money that has not yet been told what to do. I'm going to talk more about this here in a second, but essentially what we want to do is start taking these dollars and assigning them down to your category. So I might look at today's date and say, okay, well, today's, March, let's say 19th. And then I'm going to say, well, 19th, let's see. I'm going to have to pay for Spotify coming up. That's on the 21st. I'm going to go ahead and come down and type $16.99 into the assigned column and hit enter. And then now that will move money from ready to assign down here to the Spotify category so that the money is actually sitting there ready to go. To help you better understand this though, I want to come up with a little analogy that will help explain these 3 columns: assigned, activity, and available. I want you to imagine that you are going to go over to your bank. So let's draw your bank here. Now, banks don't actually work like this anymore, but we're going to pretend that they do. And so this is your bank, and you go into the bank and you say, hey there, I would like to, I'd like to walk back to the vault and actually look at my checking account. And they say, sure, right this way. And they take you to the back and they open up this big heavy vault door. And in the middle of the floor is a pile of cash. And that cash represents your bank account, or that cash is, I should say, your bank account. And if we look here and look at the bank account balance, it would be $18,000. And you say, wow, cool. Now, imagine that I'm standing there right next to you, and we're looking at this cash on the floor, and I hand you a stack of envelopes. And these envelopes, I say, hey, I would like for you to start taking the cash and actually putting it into these envelopes. Now, these envelopes, mind you, they're going to have things written on the outside of them, and I bet you can't guess, right? They're going to have targets written on the outside of them. And so these envelopes are going to say things like groceries. And we're going to look here. Let's see. What is our groceries? $1,200, right? It would say groceries, right? And then it would say 1,200. And so you might say, all right, well, $1,200 is what I plan to do. But this month, I actually know that I just did a huge haul. I've got a bunch of stuff in the fridge. I don't actually need my full $1,200. I'm going to only assign $1,000. And so you might take money out of the pile of cash and actually put it into the envelope itself. That is the assigned column. And so my target is me writing on the outside of the envelope. My assigned column is when I say, all right, I am now ready to actually put money into the envelope. And so because I'm starting this mid-month, I'm not starting YNAB at the beginning of the month, maybe I know I don't need the full $1,200 this month, so I'm only going to assign $1,000. And I think that'll more than get me through what I need the rest of the month. Great. I have now put money into the envelope. Now, further using this analogy, let's say we go to the grocery store and we actually spend some of this money. That money leaves the envelope in the amount that you spent, and when that happens, it will come into the activity column. Let's actually take a look at that. If I come over to my Chase Freedom card, you can see I've actually added in some transactions from my real life here this past week or so, and when I come in here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, all right, well, let's see, this Transparent Labs, that's protein bars. That is groceries. So I'm going to double click this guy. I'm going to type groceries, and then I'm going to hit approve. And now all of a sudden, when I go to the budget, and I look at my grocery category, you're going to see I now have an activity of $143.96. And if I click on it, you'll see the transaction was on the Chase Freedom card, $327 for Transparent Labs. So the assigned is what I'm putting into the envelope. The activity is what I'm taking out and spending. The available is like me looking at the envelope to see how much money I have left. If I've filled up all of my envelopes, the idea is I can almost treat the available column like its own miniature checking account just for that thing. So if I want to see how much money do I have available to buy groceries, I can look and say, oh, well, I have $856. So I can go to the grocery store and get what I need, no problem. So those are the three columns, and that's how targets work, and that's kind of how they operate as it relates to this envelope analogy. But here's what's really, really important. A target is your game plan. You can write with a pencil on the outside of as many envelopes as you want all day long. So you can have as much as you want targets wise. But if in our analogy, we are taking money from your bank vault and putting it into envelopes, you will run out of that. You can only assign money that you physically possess. This is the number one misconception of stuff in YNAB. People will just start coming through here and just start, putting numbers all through here, whether or not they actually have that much money physically sitting in their bank account. And you'll notice every time I'm putting money in here, this number up top is dropping because we're taking money from the bank account and we're setting it aside to do something. And so eventually I will run out of money. In YNAB, it's very important that you understand the reason that this behavior change works, the reason this tool works is because it only lets you assign dollars you actually possess right now. Yes, we can plan with your income. We do that via targets, but we cannot assign income until you've actually earned it. Now, I also want to point out that if you take a look at the cheat sheet and you scroll down, I know that some of this stuff gets confusing, and so we've added a definitions cheat sheet to the bottom of this list, and you can see the colors, the definitions, target, assigned, activity, available, some stuff around reconciling, which we haven't talked about yet. But the point here is that if you get confused on any of those words, definitely take a look at that cheat sheet. It will help remind you of what each of these words mean. Before we get to actually assigning these dollars, you may have already gotten some transactions coming through at this point. And if you're like me, you're going to see that there are white dots next to the bank accounts that tells you, hey, there's transactions here that need to be dealt with. And if I were to click into the Chase Freedom, you'll see if I hit this blue header at the very top of my, window here, it will filter my view for just what needs to be dealt with. And you can take a look at some of my spending here recently. And so first we can say El Mexicano Mexican. Okay, well, that's the Mexican joint. Well, we're going to double click this and we're going to type eating out and then put that right there. And then Amazon, well, Amazon, that's going to be the Amazon category. Domino's, that's going to be the eating out category. Now, Chessable, that's going to be Nick's Fun Spending. Wawa, this is going to be gas. Street parking, gym membership. So this one, YNAB actually guessed correctly, and I can approve that one. Google, YouTube, that's going to be entertainment. Publix is groceries. Ravenite is eating out. And I'll save this credit card payment. We're going to do that here later. So we're going to talk more about this when I get to your routines, but you'll notice that as the transactions come in, part of my job is to tell YNAB where they go. Over time, YNAB will learn, and this will get faster and faster because YNAB will guess correctly on more items. But you'll notice that now all of those things are going to show up in the different categories over here with the activity column, and it'll show up and show all the different spending in these different places. Let's take a look at the checking account because I do want to show you one here that's a little bit different. If I hit this blue header here, you're going to notice that there's a deposit coming in of $4,858. And this in the payee, I just put name of the employer. So this is your paycheck. Now you'll notice in the budget that we have not, actually put any income categories in here. And that's because in YNAB, all of your income goes into ready to assign. And so in this case, the category is ready to assign. Now, if you're concerned about that, I can differentiate this income with the payee. So for example, if I have Social Security and I'm going to put that in here as well. Let's do that. So Social Security, and we'll put that here, and then ready to assign, and 2000. And so you'll notice that if I have the name of my employer and then I have Social Security, if I go over to the reports and look at the income versus expense, you'll notice that in the month of March, it will show income from employer of $4,800 and income from Social Security of $2,000. And so in this case, even though they're both going into the same category, I can differentiate it with the payee. Why is that important? Well, I want you to take home that all of your income goes into ready to assign. And then with that income, we're going to assign it down to your categories. Now let's pop back over to our cheat sheet here. You're going to notice that it says budget ready to assign down to 0, and it starts with the credit card balances. Now why is that? Well, when you start YNAB, if you use credit cards, even if you pay them off in full every month, you are coming in with some amount of debt. And even if you are paying them off in full, YNAB doesn't know that you're paying them off in full. And so you have to tell YNAB, hey, for the cards that I'm planning to pay off, I need to assign enough money to cover that initial outstanding debt. And so in this case, my Discover card, I owe $890. Let's say that's a card that I plan to pay off in full every month. I would want to assign to the Discover card category $890.50. Now, what does the available column mean again? The available column tells me how much money I have to do that thing. So if I look at my groceries category, I currently have $850 available to buy groceries. In the same way, I currently have $890 available to pay the credit card off. And it just so happens that my credit card has a balance of $890, which means I can pay those off to 0. Now, I've got a dedicated, super in-depth video on credit cards in YNAB. It'll be linked up below. You can definitely click on that and watch that, and I would encourage you to. But I want to at least give you a cursory overview of them. Now, if you have a credit card that you're not yet paying off in full, or you are riding the float a little bit, you're going to want to add a target to this. On the right-hand side, you'll notice this Chase Freedom card. I'm going to click Create Target. Now, if this is a card that I feel very confident of when I'm going to pay it off, I can choose Pay Off Balance by Date. Most of the time, though, I don't like to do that. Most of the time, I like to do pay specific amount monthly, and I'm going to put some amount in here that I would like to chip away at the credit card debt. And so I'm going to do that. I'm going to say maybe $500 a month. And then I would need to budget a certain initial amount towards it. So maybe I know, hey, you know what? I owe $7,300. I can't afford to budget that full amount right now, but I can assign at least, $2,500 to it initially, and then I'll work on chipping away the rest of it over time. So that's the first part here. Any money that is sitting in your ready to assign that's from your initial starting balances, I want you to first look at your credit cards and see, do I need to budget? Do I need to assign to cover those initial starting balances? And if you can't afford to do the full balance, well then how much do you want to go ahead and set aside towards those credit cards before moving on to the rest of these items? The next thing that I want to do is I want to assign any money that in my mind I've been saving up for something. So you'll notice that after assigning some money to, my Chase Freedom and my Discover card and then some of these other things that I've been playing around with, I still have $15,000 left in ready to assign. Now, that money is physically sitting in my checking account. I need to tell YNAB what I want to do with it. Well, maybe I know that this kitchen renovation, I've actually been saving up for that. And so although my target is $400, I've actually already been trying to set aside some money for that in my head. And so maybe in my mind, I've already got $5,000 saved up. I need to initially assign $5,000 to it. And then starting next month in April, I'll assign $400 a month and it'll keep growing. All right, that gives me $10,000 left. Maybe again, I've got a little extra in here for small trips. And I've already saved maybe $1,000 for this winter trip. All right. So I've thought about any amount of savings that I have. Now, this would be very important, again, if you had an on-budget savings account or another bank account on budget. Again, I would encourage you to not have that right now, but in my example, I am going to assign some of that money. So I've thought about my credit cards. I've thought about my savings. Next, I need to assign money for upcoming bills. Now, what do I mean when I say that? Well, if today is March 19th, then I'm starting YNAB in the middle of the month, and there's a bunch of bills that I don't need for this month. In this case, I'm actually going to ignore the mortgage payment, the utilities, the pet insurance, the car insurance, all of these things. I'm going to look at, well, actually not car insurance, that's on the 23rd, anything after the 19th. So in this case, I'm going to say, well, car insurance is coming up. I'm going to go ahead and put $185 there. Netflix is at the end of the month. I need $18.99 there. Lawn service, that's coming up, $250 there. Cleaner, $360 there, right? And I'm going to go ahead and assign for the bills that I know are coming up here. Now, if I want to do this in bulk, I can actually select a number of these, and then just selecting these checkboxes or holding the Control or Command key on your keyboard. And then I could come over to the right-hand side and actually click that underfunded button. I'm going to do that now. When I do that, boom, that will just immediately assign money from ready to assign down to my categories based on those targets. So I'm thinking about upcoming bills. I'm making sure I'm budgeting for that. All right. Now, in this case, if I still have money left, so I've done credit card savings, upcoming bills, and I still have money left, now I'm going to just start thinking about everything else. I've got $6,000 left in my bank account that has not yet been told what to do, right? $6,000 left still sitting in this big pile of cash that has not yet been given a job. And so in this case, I'm going to start at the top and I'm going to look down and go, all right, well, what else do I need to, budget for? Eating out? Well, we're probably going to go out to eat for the rest of the month. I'm going to go ahead and put some money there. Entertainment, maybe ATM cash. Yeah, I'm going to go to the ATM this weekend. I'll get some money out there. Groceries, I've already, put in what I think I need there. Pet expenses. Oh, yeah, haircut, that's coming up. And I'm going to go line by line and actually assign this money down to zero, because that's going to give all of my dollars a job. For the purposes of this tutorial, let's pretend that I've gone through here already and I don't think I need any more money to get through the month of March. And I'm like, I look at the available column and I think I'm good. I don't need any more money. I think I kind of know what's going on the next week or two. I think I'm good. I don't need any more money. Well, with this leftover $5,000 at this point, I can actually go forward into the month of April and start assigning it to April's mortgage payment and April's utilities and internet and April's pet insurance. A lot of people, it gets confusing to hop back and forth between one month and the next month, and it gets very easy to kind of make some mistakes. And so because of that, most of the time, I actually prefer to start with beginners, just putting all of this money right down here into the next month's money category, just like that. And so this next month's money, I kind of hold it there until it's actually April 1st in real life. And then I will take this money and move it into April and then use it to fund April's categories. Now, we're going to cover that more in the next lesson where we talk about our routines, but I just want to show you how this assigning works. So at this point in your setup checklist, you need to assign all of your money in this order. And if you still have money left after thinking about what you need this month, then I would encourage you to put it into a next month's money category. Or if you're feeling comfortable, you could literally click the arrow key, go ahead and go forward and actually assign it into the next month. That's totally fine. That's totally fine as well. Now that I've assigned all of my money, I do want to drive this point home about over assigning. I talked about this a few minutes ago. Let's say that I just kept going, right? And I kept putting money down here, 200 here and 140 here and 100 here. All of a sudden, you're going to notice that at the very top of my screen, I have gone negative red. And so now YNAB says, hey, dude, you've assigned more money than you actually have in your bank accounts, which is no good. That means that I have put money in here that I do not actually have. Now, why is that so important? Well, if the goal, right, if we're looking at the available column to help us make decisions, if I'm looking at my bank account and I see there's 20 grand, then I'm like, yeah, let's get this kitchen renovation maybe started. Whereas if I look at my kitchen renovation category, I only have $5,000. But imagine I budget a ton of money that I don't have, and I just go ahead and put, let's just put, $1 million in here. Look at this. Look, it says I have $1 million available to go, do a kitchen renovation. That makes no sense. We can look at the checking account and see I don't have $1 million sitting in the checking account. And the reason that it lets me put it in here, it's because I can assign whatever I want, but it's going to tell me, hey man, you have assigned more money than you physically possess in your bank account. That is no good. So I'm going to put this back to 5,000. and now we are good to go. We have no negative red up top. So you cannot over assign money because you do not actually have that money. And the whole point is that we want to be able to rely on the available column to make decisions, not our bank account balance to make decisions. Okay, so we've talked about negative red up top. That means over assigned. But what about negative red down below, like down here? Take a look at my gym membership, for example. You can see here that I'm overspent. That's what this means, okay? So overspending, and specifically negative red, means overspending on a debit or checking account. In this case, I have the gym membership where I've assigned nothing. I have activity of $20, so I've spent $20, and so I'm now overspent because I never assigned it. And the negative red indicates that I've done it on a checking account. Let's go back to our little envelope analogy here. What if I want to move money from one envelope to another, like take money from this envelope and put it down here in this envelope? Well, I can do that by clicking here and moving it. In this case, I could say, you know what? I went over on the gym, but I'm going to take it from Nick's fun spending money. So I'm going to click this negative red. I'm going to click cover overspending. And I'm going to say, all right, I want to cover this with Nick spending, and then hit OK. And it will move money from Nick spending up here to the gym membership category, which is pretty cool. So that's negative red. It's either going to be overassigned if it's up top, or it's going to be overspending down below in the available column. Now, what about this yellow, though? So you'll notice yellow has a couple of different types of yellow, okay? So one type of yellow is going to be this color here, and it has a little bitty pie chart that's only partially filled in. You can see that one's almost all the way filled in, whereas this one only has a little bit filled in, whereas something like this has nothing filled in. The yellow in this case indicates that you have a target that has not been funded. So why is that important? Well, the targets are your game plan, and YNAB is here to remind you that you did not hit your game plan. Now, it's okay sometimes, though, to leave it this way. Like in the example of a mortgage, if I'm starting YNAB in the middle of a month and it's yellow, but I know that I've already paid the mortgage for the month, I don't need to fund this. I don't need to make it turn green. Green, by the way, is going to be when I've actually fully achieved my target, right? And so I don't need to budget any money to the mortgage because I already know it's taken care of. I don't need any more money for my mortgage until next month. So in this case, I'm just going to ignore that yellow. So no big deal. Now, there is one other type of yellow. I'm going to go ahead and show this here. Let me create it. Here, we're going to say Amazon. And let's say that I spend, a chunk of money on Amazon. We're going to spend $550. And so in this case, you're going to notice that there's a yellow negative number, and it has this little bitty credit card with an exclamation point next to it. This is different than the negative red because it is overspending on a credit card. So negative number in the available column is still going to be overspending. It's just that negative red is overspending on debit, negative yellow is overspending on credit. I can do the same thing, though. I could say, okay, well, I'm going to take this entertainment, I'm going to cover that from eating out, and then I'm going to take this Amazon and cover that from groceries. And now I'm nice and clean. I have no negatives overspending anywhere, but I do have some yellows that are not funded, but that's okay. So green, you fully funded your target. You're good to go. Money is there. Yellow, typically I would think about it like a stoplight. Slow down, pay attention. Yellow isn't necessarily bad. It means that you could have a target that's not funded, or it means that you have overspending on a credit card. And then there's negative red, which is up top, over assigned, or down below, overspent. And negative red has to get fixed. You cannot leave negative red. We're going to cover that more in the daily routine in the next lesson, but it's important that you keep negative red especially always covered. In fact, the daily routine is actually the last step of the setup checklist. It's to start practicing your daily routine. And if you come down and look at the daily routine, you'll notice there's only a couple of items. The first is to categorize your transactions. You watched me do that earlier. The next is to cover your overspending. Those are the main two things that you do daily. Reconciling is optional. We'll cover that in the next lesson. And then checking YNAB before spending. The idea there is just getting in the habit of, before you make a especially discretionary purchasing decision, especially if it's larger, you would take a quick look and say, okay, do I actually have money in that category so that I know preemptively whether or not I can really afford to do this? And if I don't have enough money, right, if I look and see, okay, well, I really want to buy something and it's going to cost me more than $213, I would need to decide ahead of time, am I willing to take money like from the ATM category and move it to the NIC spending category so that now I can go and buy my thing? That is the daily routine, and that hopefully helps you understand a little bit more about how to use this budget screen. One more thing we need to touch on before we go into the rest of the routines is how credit cards work in YNAB. Now, like I said, I do have a dedicated credit card video. I would encourage you to check that out, but let me explain a little bit more because credit cards can be confusing. Let's go back over here to this little envelope analogy, and I want you to imagine that in addition to all of your normal envelopes like groceries and gas and eating out and your mortgage, there's this other little extra envelope called pay back your credit card, right? Called make credit card payments. What happens in YNAB is behind the scenes, when you spend money from an envelope like groceries, if you spend it on a debit card, right, money leaves the envelope. We saw that over here. Money leaves the activity column, and then now we have less money, right? Watch this. I have $580 in my groceries envelope. If I go to my checking and I add a transaction for Publix and I put $182 at Publix, then when that comes through, now I only have $400 left in groceries, right? Because the activity caused that money to leave the envelope and it's gone. So now I only have $400 left. That typically makes sense to people. What gets confusing is, what if you buy groceries on a credit card? What happens is, rather than the money just going away completely, it actually goes and moves into the credit card envelope. And then when you make the credit card payment, YNAB sends that away. So basically what's happening is that behind the scenes, as you are spending money on a credit card, YNAB is moving money from your categories where the spending happened up to the credit card payment category automatically. Let's watch this. If I do the exact same transaction, so I'm going to go to Publix and I'm going to buy some groceries, and I'm going to instead do it on this quick silver card where I don't have anything going on yet, okay? So I'm going to go to Publix. I'm going to spend $180. And so now I've got a transaction here. When I go to the budget, look at this. All of a sudden, my groceries went down by $180 and the quick silver credit card payment went up by $180. YNAB behind the scenes is moving money from the groceries envelope to the pay back your credit card envelope. This is what keeps me out of debt. This is what makes this budgeting tool so powerful. This typically will break people's brains at first, but if you can start to wrap your mind around it, it is immensely helpful because it will keep you from running up debt. It will ensure that you only ever spend on a credit card what you can afford to pay off. And now when you go to actually make the credit card payment, you will have enough money to do that. Let's take a look at that, in fact. When it comes to credit card payments, you'll notice earlier in the video, I left this uncategorized, right? All these other ones I categorized, but I left this one uncategorized. With this credit card payment, here's the key. You need to understand that in YNAB, credit card payments are not spending money. Think about it this way. Most people think about their credit cards like some other bill. If I ask somebody, what bills do you have? They'll say things like, well, I have a mortgage payment and I have a utility bill and I have a life insurance bill and a car loan. Oh, and I also have the credit card bill. YNAB is trying to break that habit by saying, no. You don't have a credit card bill as an expense. You are buying things on a credit card. Transparent Labs, El Mexicano, Amazon, Domino's, Amazon, right? You are buying the individual things on the card. And as long as we budget for those individual things, we don't also have to budget for the credit card payment. We have budgeted for the spending itself. The credit card payment is not spending. The credit card payment is a transfer. You are simply moving money from one bank account to another bank account. So in this case, instead of giving it a category, I'm going to come right here to the payee section, which is where we handle transfers. And I'm going to choose payment from checking. So you'll notice this payment is coming in, right? It's coming into the credit card. I'm going to tell YNAB what bank account paid this. And in this case, I'm going to choose payment from checking. When I do that, YNAB will automatically know that this is a Chase Freedom payment. And when I hit save, check this out. If I go to the checking, you will now see a corresponding payment over here. Notice it even has this little double arrow that lets me know, hey, this is interacting with another bank account here. And so I can click this. It will take me to the other side. There's the payment coming into the credit card, right? Notice I'm in the credit card account. If I click this, now it's the payment coming out of the checking. Notice I'm out of the checking going into the credit card. And when I go to the budget, you will notice that that payment shows up here in the Chase Freedom section as a credit card payment appropriately. If I were to go do this as well for the Discover card, I could do that. So I could come in here and I could add a little payment here for the Discover card. And I'll say that this is from the checking and it's coming in for $800. And then now all of a sudden, when I go to the budget, a second ago, I could afford to pay $890. Now I can afford to pay $90 because I paid the $800. Credit card payments in YNAB are transfers. That's the key you want to understand. And you also want to understand that as long as you're covering your overspending, you will always have enough money to pay back the credit card. And now you are totally set up. At this point, we've got all of your accounts in place. We've got your category groups and categories in place. You've got targets on everything, and we have assigned all of your money down to 0. We've completed all 10 steps on the YNAB setup checklist, and you're ready to start learning your routines, which is exactly what we're going to cover in the next lesson, where we're going to go over the daily routine, the payday routine, and the monthly routine, all the steps that you're going to need to know to use YNAB successfully moving forward. So go ahead and pop over there to that lesson, and I'll look forward to seeing you then.